Antietam.
Yeah.
Sharpsburg, Maryland had a casualty count of like 23,000 one day.
Yeah.
So they were probably two of the bloodiest battles during the Civil War. Sharpsburg being the bloodiest single day, Gettysburg being the bloodiest in 3 days. Total count of people killed during the Civil War was right around, they're saying between 615 to 620,000, but then the reports are also coming out now because of all of those that suffered injuries after the Civil War and all of that. The count now is rising almost to 700,000 who actually died from the Civil War, either from wounds or whatever. So, you know, so it's an amazing figure. This reenactment 15 years ago, the 135th, it was terrible that day. We were out here actually on the field in 104 and 105 degree temperatures. The amazing thing about it, that was almost the actual temperature the Battle of Gettysburg was fought under. So, you know, so yeah, a lot of the casualties probably even came from heat, which there's no real true records on that also.
It's called Pickett's charge. Who's the guy that stopped him? Well, that's when you have to decide whether or not Robert E. Lee was just having a really bad day. I heard Gary Gallagher talking about it last week, and he was saying the same thing. You know, modern scholars are coming to the belief that Lee just had one of his worst days ever. Hancock's men, but who's the division commander that put his men in there? Gibbon, he was hurt.
Oh, yeah.
So some brigade guy, if you've ever heard Frank Haskell, read his report. It's one of the most famous reports. It's the only one that's written right after the battle. It's in a letter to his brother, and it's one of the most incredible things, because he describes the charge as we think of it romantically today. You know, he says at exactly 3 o'clock they came out of the woods with, you know, their bayonets gleaming, and they talked about how the missiles started flying through like hail on the top of a tin roof in the summer. Things like that. You know, you don't usually write things like that to your brother in a letter, but he was obviously really, really moved. And the reason you don't know more about him is he was killed the next year. But Haskell's letter is probably the very best one that talks about that. And in the middle of all that, Haskell turns over and he says, well, we got to get somebody to close in on the left flank, because we're going to lose otherwise. So he rides over and he talks to Norman Hall, who's from what state?
Michigan.
Never heard of him, have you? He was there at John Brown's hanging. He was the only guy from Michigan that was at Fort Sumter. And before the war, the Citadel Cadets started the war early in January. People don't ever talk about that, but they actually started shooting the Star of the West in January. And Hall was sent in to negotiate to get them to stop. And Hall basically must have been a pretty smart guy, because he convinced the Confederates and everybody else to wait until what happened with Lincoln. And when they finally did wait, of course, then they had to do their duty. But he was surrendered with Fort Sumter. He got very, very sick. He had some kind of fever that he contracted at Fort Sumter, someplace in South Carolina. So you don't hear of him very much until Antietam. And at Antietam, he's one of the basic leaders who has to take over from his unit to take over a brigade and basically run a division while they're just getting slaughtered in the north and the west woods. Everything's falling apart. Then he shows up at a place called Fredericksburg. Somebody has to lead the entire Union Army across the river. Guess who volunteers to do it? Norman Hall, right? Isn't this great? I mean, this story just gets better and better, doesn't it? And then he's here for Pickett's charge. In the middle of Pickett's charge, when everything's falling apart, he leads his men in the left flank and they charge in with Andy Webb. Andy Webb got the Medal of Honor. And some people say Andy Webb said, I don't deserve it, Norman Hall did. But you never heard of Norman Hall, have you?
2 ranks, right? My file, left. Onto the street, gun.
Up, men! Up! And to your posts! And let no man forget today that you are from old Virginia! 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 For your lands. For your homes. For your sweethearts. For your wives. For Virginia. Forward! March! Virginians! With me! Who will come with me? Let's go, boys!